everyone, and welcome to the RV Inspection and Care podcast and video. I'm Dwayne. I'm a certified RV inspector, and today we're going to be talking about Airstream travel trailers and whether you should choose one for full-time RV travel and camping. Just say the word Airstream and pretty much everybody knows what you're talking about. They get this picture in their mind of that shiny aluminum rounded travel trailer that you see pretty much everywhere. So there's no question, Airstream travel trailers are very popular. But are they a really good choice for full-time RVing? You know, the vast majority of travel trailers that are sold today are actually only made and designed to be used for occasional weekends and vacations. And as long as you use them that way, they're going to be just fine. But full-time living puts lots of extra stress on RVs, stress that can wear them out very quickly if they aren't designed for it. So the number one requirement for full-time RVs is being built well with quality. So then, are Airstream travel trailers built well enough for full-time travel? I made a video just a little while back about Airstream travel trailers and how well they are actually made. And in the video, I said that both high-quality building materials and construction methods are being used by Airstream. For instance, Airstream says that they put in 350 hours for the average Airstream to be produced. And you can compare that with only 50 hours for most other kinds of travel trailers that are sold out there. So clearly, a lot of extra time and effort is being put in to Airstream travel trailers. And that's why roughly 70% of all Airstreams ever made are still being used today, according to Airstream. Well, that's an impressive figure, and what other travel trailer manufacturer can really make that claim? Clearly then, Airstreams are built well enough to withstand full-time use. But just because you have a well-built RV, it doesn't mean that it's going to fit you for full-time travel. There are very practical day-to-day considerations that also go along that you need to consider as well. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about the pros and cons of Airstream travel trailers on a day-to-day basis for practicality. Number one on the pro list is they're built light. In fact, that's one of the main reasons for that aluminum shell, to keep the weight down. That means, too, that if you have to buy a tow vehicle, the tow vehicle will probably not have to be a diesel-powered vehicle. It can probably have a gasoline engine in it, and that's big for some. You see, those middle-range Airstreams, like the Flying Cloud, the International, the Globetrotter, all of those top out under 9,000 pounds. Even if you go to the Classic, the biggest model that Airstream makes, it tops out at 10,000 pounds. So that's well within the capability of many gas-powered trucks that are on the market today. And that's a big savings for folks that are trying to get into this kind of RV travel. Let's move on to number two. And the second pro is that Airstreams fit in campsites very easily. The reason for this is that there are several models that they make that are 30 feet and under. That's an important point, because 30 feet or less gets you in almost any state park or national park or almost anywhere in any campsite. So that's really good for full-timers who want to travel and go pretty much anywhere. The next pro is that there's lots of floor plans, but they're also well thought out for livability. It's clear that Airstreams put a lot of effort into this to make sure that their layouts make sense. They're reasonable and everything is where it really should be. Now that makes a big difference in day-to-day livability, especially when you're doing so on a full-time basis. The next pro is that there is no drivetrain to have to deal with in the RV. This is one of the big problems with motorhomes, is the drivetrain and the RV itself is all in one unit. When you have a problem with either one of them, they very well could go right in the shop. And so that's an issue. But because it's a travel trailer that Airstream is making, there's no drivetrain. The drivetrain is your tow vehicle. So that means that the RV itself has very little that can go majorly wrong. And that's a big pro. All right, let's move along to the cons now. The number one con for Airstreams is they are expensive. No doubt about it. Those mid-size models that I talked about earlier, the Flying Cloud, the International, the Globetrotter, they're going to start at $90,000 plus and go up from there. The Classic, we're talking about close to $190,000. So clearly that's a lot to swallow for many RVers out there. And as a result, it's going to eliminate many of them being able to even afford an Airstream. So that can be a disadvantage for sure. The second con, no slides. There was a time when Airstream tried out putting slides in, but they stopped it and they don't do it anymore. So that means if you get a 25-foot Airstream with about 8 feet or so interior space from side to side, you only have about 200 square feet of living area. A 30-foot Airstream gives you about 250 square feet of living area. That's not very much. That can get very tight. Some feel claustrophobic in it. So it's a consideration. It's something you need to think about before you buy Airstream. The third con, they're not really made for extreme temperatures. Now, they're just fine really for most 4 seasons, but when you get to the extremes, you're going to have some issues. One of the reasons for that is that aluminum shell. It transfers temperatures from the outside to the inside much easier than the materials that most travel trailers are made out of. So it means if you have an Airstream, you really should try to stay in temperate areas and follow good weather as much as possible. The next con is generally you're going to find pretty small kitchens and refrigerators. So if you are a cook and you like to cook and you like to spread things out and all of that, well, you're going to have a real challenge on your hands with Airstream travel trailers. The last con we want to talk about, there's really not very much storage in the travel trailer. So it means that when you buy a tow vehicle, you need to be sure you're going to have enough room in that vehicle to store a lot of the things that probably most other RVers might put in their RV. It's not a huge issue, it's not the end of the world, but it is something to consider. Well, those are the pros and cons I wanted to cover with you today. If you're on the fence about some of those disadvantages or cons, well, here's my recommendation. Rent an Airstream first, try it out, make sure that you feel it's livable for you first. Don't just go out and buy one if you're unsure about some of these things we talked about today. Also, I want to mention that quality control issues have affected Airstream. as well as pretty much all other RV manufacturers in recent years, especially since the COVID pandemic. So if you're buying a new Airstream, be sure that you get it inspected before purchase. And that way you can find all the issues that have come out of the factory. You can get them fixed before you take ownership. Now, I've also created a guidebook for buying new RVs that will be helpful for new Airstream buying too. And if you think that could help you, I'll put a link to it in the description of the video and the podcast. Well, there's lots of pros for full timing in an Airstream, no doubt about it. But there are some cons, some things you need to think about as well. And hopefully what I've covered here with you today will help you be able to think about it and make the right choice for you. Well, that's it for now. Have safe and happy travels, my friends. Until next time.